All right, I think it's been a while since I've done this. Hello. It's been a while since I've done a live stream, so I'm going to probably sit here by myself for a few moments and see how long it takes for people to get notified that it's begun. All right. If anybody's, well, I see there's a few people here already. If anybody's up for it, just drop a line, drop a note, and say hi. Oh, there's a message, my first message from my colleague Layla Baudouin. Thank you. I can't take credit for the tree though. I'm at a friend's place in Corner Brook, so I didn't set that up. Hi, Jen. Oh, thanks, David. Thanks for letting me know you got a notification that we started. Um, okay, great. I see some people are with me. So I guess I'll just start because people will be able to watch this after the fact. So I don't want to. I don't want to sit here saying nothing waiting for people to join. But just I decided very last minute, like a few days ago, to do this because, well, for one, there aren't very many opportunities. Well, we haven't created very many opportunities for me to speak publicly to people virtually, I guess, other than the people I meet in my day-to-day work and when I'm out doing stories and at the occasional events that we do. But I decided that I wanted to try this, and I wanted to try to do it before Christmas. So here we are. So thank you to anybody to everyone who's tuning in. I see Jen, Layla, Jonathan, Angela, Antle, Greg Janes. Hi, Greg. Neria, also from the Independence Board. Paul Dwyer. Hi, Paul. And Margaret Cranford. Hello, Margaret. It's been a while. Good to see you, too. So the reason I'm doing this now before Christmas is because, well, the Indies had a really good year. I think possibly the biggest year yet. We started off the year on a pretty strong foot, and in the spring realized that we were nominated for several journalism awards. Well, to be clear, media outlets have to submit the work that they feel is award worthy, but then you have to wait a while and you find out from the different awards presenters whether you've been long listed or short listed. And so this was a big year for us in that sense. We won 4 Atlantic Journalism Awards. We were nominated for 2 Canadian Association of Journalists Awards, and we won a digital DPA, a digital publishing award for Seasplainer. So it has been a big year for the Indy in that respect. But also, the awards aside, because the awards are actually for the work that we did last year in 2023. So I hope that we'll continue that momentum in early 2025 for the work that we did this year. But then we ended up, a few things happened which kind of brought us into uncharted territory in terms of the current incarnation of the Independent as a non-profit. We were able to successfully we applied for funding, and we were able to get enough funding to hire 2 full-time journalists, 2 full-time reporters, that is. One on a 1-year contract and the other on a 6-month contract. So for those of you who've been following our work, you've likely seen the work of Yumna Iftikhar in St. John's. We were able to hire Yumna through a big grant from Canada Race Relations Foundation, which in 2024 and into 2025 has funded somewhere in the range of 10 or 12 media outlets across the country to hire BIPOC journalists because, as we know, BIPOC journalists are largely underrepresented in newsrooms, and this was a way to help develop fellowships so that we could get diverse coverage into news media outlets across the country. And it's been amazing having Yumna on board. She's a great young, enterprising journalist, and we recently got to travel to Labrador together and cover the Innu inquiry, the inquiry into Innu in the child protection system. And so, yeah, Yumna right now is working on a big project, which will be unveiling a couple of her stories. One next week, hopefully Monday, right before Christmas, and another one early in the new year, a series that she's been working on for some time now about the experiences of newcomers to Newfoundland and Labrador and some of the challenges that they face shortly after arriving. With the other funding that we got this year was the local journalism initiative funding, which a lot of media outlets across the country get that. I think we may have applied for it before. I'm not 100% sure if we got it. If we did, it was before my time returning to the Independent. But with that, we were able to get funding to hire a reporter to cover Labrador, which is, for people on the island, when you think about how much of a news desert so many parts of the island outside the Avalon are, it's even worse in Labrador, where there's a small but mighty team at CBC in Happy Valley Goose Bay, and I know a few of them, and they work hard. But when you're talking about covering remote fly-in communities like those in Nunatsiavut and Natwashish along the coast, it's really hard to be. And then, of course, Labrador West being 4 or 5 hour drive away from Goose Bay, it's really hard to get around in Labrador. So we were really excited to get that funding from the LJI, and we hired Evan Kareen with that, who was most recently a Telegram reporter covering Labrador for the Telegram until the Post Media takeover. And Evan was also previously editor at the Labradorian in Goose Bay. So Evan was with us for about a month and a half, and he recently accepted another job elsewhere, which I'm really excited for him. Excited about for him because there aren't a whole lot of opportunities for good-paying permanent jobs for journalists once they leave the industry. So I don't know if that'll be the last we hear from Evan, but it was a privilege to work with him and to have him on board for a month and a half. And I think he showed us how much of a difference one reporter can make when they're able to be devoted entirely to Labrador, and when they have spent time in Labrador and had the opportunity to travel around to different communities and get to know people and build relationships with people. But Evan's not with us anymore. But we do have a few things in the works. We're working with a few freelancers who are either in or from Labrador and who have experience reporting up there. So we're going to keep that Labrador reporting going. So those are the two big changes that a lot of you as readers might have noticed this year. Just a lot more coverage, especially in the second half of this year. We've been able to do a lot more work, and that's just simply a reflection of the fact that we have more resources. So I'm going to keep talking until if anybody wants to ask questions or make comments or prompt me to talk about anything, feel free. I'm able to see the comments that you're leaving there. And hi, Leanne. It's good to see you too. And Kimberly Dawson, thank you for the comment. I haven't done this in a long time, so I wasn't sure how easy it would be to see the comments and follow, but feel free to ask some questions there. The success in getting that funding the immediate benefit obviously is that we're able to do more stories, cover more of the kinds of stories we want to cover, and the issues and topics and the communities. However, as most independent media outlets in Canada today would know, and this would be their experience as well, that funding is contingent on your ability to get it, or that the ability to have those resources is contingent on your ability to get the funding each year. So 1 year we could have two full-time reporters, as we do right now. But in the springtime, when that funding dries up, runs out, we could be back to just one full-time journalist, which is me. And so we have to kind of, we're trying different things out right now to see kind of what works, what people like, what's manageable for a small newsroom like us. But at the same time, we may have to pivot at any given time depending on our ability to get funding. And so, this brings us back to sort of our, primary source of revenue, or at least our sustainable source of revenue. It's not primary in the sense that it makes up most of the funding, but it is the most important, which is the donations that our readers and supporters make. Because we are an independent media outlet. We have resisted getting into advertising. We don't depend on a corporate entity or leadership to sustain us. We have more editorial freedom than most media outlets do. There's absolutely nobody telling me what decisions to make as an editor. And so that is increasingly rare in an environment where the news industry is literally collapsing and disintegrating around us. So that's just a little bit of background to kind of set the tone for this discussion. And I see that there's a couple of questions coming in, so I'll do my best I'll read them and answer them as they come in. So David Brake is asking, do you know yet about whether the governmental funding is locked in for at least one more year? Can we hope that you can bring in some of the other experienced journalists who have been shared by other organizations? David, maybe you can clarify what you mean shared by other organizations, but I'll answer the first part of your question, which is no, we don't know if you're talking about the federal government funding. That, by the way, is distributed or dispersed by an arm's length organization. So it's not actually the federal government itself who is deciding who gets the LJI funding. But the short answer to your question is no, I don't believe there is any confirmation that funding is locked in for at least one more year. We were offered 9 months of funding this year from the Local Journalism Initiative, and they seem to be fairly under-resourced, and it took us 3 months back and forth with them to negotiate the contract that they offered us. And so by the time we did that, we weren't able to accept 9 months funding anymore unless we were able to put out 9 months worth of content in a 6-month period, because they give you a quota. So anyways, that means that we have funding, I think, till the end of March from the Local Journalism Initiative. And then after that, even if the funding is extended another year by the current government, or if we have a new government, that doesn't guarantee that the Independent would be one of the media outlets that would get it. We don't even know if we'll apply yet. It just depends how this one goes, because we've traditionally focused on quality over quantity, and the Local Journalism Initiative program and the funding and the stipulations that come with it require news outlets to put out 5 to 8 stories a week. And we were able to negotiate with them based on our size and our capacity, and also the fact that it's very difficult to get to land a full-time journalist on the ground in Labrador. The funding doesn't come with any money for travel or anything like that. So we were able to negotiate an output of around three stories a week, give or take. So all that to say, we'll still be able to cover Labrador up until the spring, and what we're able to do beyond that in Labrador is going to be dependent on the resources we have, which hopefully we'll see an influx, see more support coming from Newfoundlanders and Labradorians who hopefully value the work that we do and see how important it is that we maintain at least one of our own media outlets that is not privately or corporate owned, and that is owned and run by the people for the people, so to speak. And so, David, yeah, let me go to the second part of your question. Bring in some of the other experienced journalists who have been lost by other organizations. Well, that would be wonderful, and again, that is going to depend on the amount of support we get mostly from our readers, and secondly from any potential grants that we may be able to apply for and be successful in getting in 2025. So it's kind of all up in the air. But yes, when we're seeing good journalists being laid off from other media outlets, and there are some in this province who I would love to work with, and I really, really hope that opportunity presents itself. Hi, Lillian. Thanks for the comment on the Christmas tree. For those who are just joining us, I'm coming to you live from Corner Brook. I'm actually not in my own home. I live in Benoit's Cove, which is just about 25-minute drive outside of Corner Brook, and I'm using a friend's living room, a friend who's gone for the holidays, because they have a warm, cozy house with a wood stove, as you can see. There you go. I got the fire going. I've got their Christmas tree lit up, and I'm quite warm and comfortable here. I'm going to go back now. There's a question from Neria, who is, for those who don't know, Neria Aylward is a board member on our volunteer board of directors. And Neria is asking, how do you decide which leads to follow up on? It's funny because Neria and I talk, as I do with other board members all the time, but we're not always talking about editorial stuff. There's half the work being done at the Independent is done by volunteers, and that's all the administrative work and the leg work for fundraising and all kinds of stuff. And that's what we usually talk about during board meetings and stuff. So in terms of what leads to follow up on, well, obviously the Independent has priorities, editorial priorities. We don't do regular business reporting as other media outlets like all Newfoundland Labrador do. We tend to be fairly social justice oriented. We really, it's my personal belief as a journalist of 20 years now that the most important role that we play as journalists is to be able to expose injustice, hold power to account, and make sure that those who are marginalized or neglected or mistreated in society have a place for their stories to be told, or for the stories about the injustices they face to be told, and to try to bring about justice. And that has long been a primary goal and purpose for news media. But I think today, and for quite a while now, we've lived in a climate where the corporatization of the media has really, produced, especially in daily news, which you can't blame journalists who work in daily news necessarily. I've done it too. It's really hard to get into the nuances and the details of stories in a way that would really, really help people understand the significance of a given story and inspire them to action. So, that's kind of how we decide what leads to pursue. But that said, we take story ideas and pitches from readers, from freelance journalists, and a lot of times stories have these kinds of angles, about justice or injustice or a social justice element or an environmental element. And so it's just a matter of finding an appropriate angle for a story a lot of times. And that's not always apparent on the face of it when a pitch comes in, but sometimes we work with freelancers or engage in a bit of dialogue with readers who are pitching story ideas and find out, what would be a way that the Independent could cover this story and produce a civic good, I guess, produce a public good, because that's what we're all about, is serving the public. Journalism is a public service. It's supposed to be fundamental to democracy. And so when we do stories, we really kind of look for those angles, see if we can tell the story in a way that other media don't or aren't, or if we can tell stories even better that other media aren't telling. So that's kind of how we decide what leads to follow up on. And then, of course, in a more practical sense, it all depends on resources too. There are several investigative pieces that I've kind of over the last year begun to collect information on, but just haven't had the time and resources to fully pursue them. And I hope that, if we can be successful in this month's end of the year fundraiser, that we'll have more resources to pursue more investigative stories in 2025, because those are the stories that really take a lot of time and resources, but they can also be the ones that have the most impact. David Brake is asking, can Evan's funding, well, that's the LJI funding that we used to hire Evan, be reallocated to another? And the answer is yes. So we have some freelancers from Labrador and in Labrador who we're working with now to start producing some stories. Actually, we've already done run a couple of stories by Heidi Adder, who was not recently, but about a year ago, the host of Labrador Morning, CBC's radio show. And Heidi still freelances for CBC. And I had the privilege of meeting Heidi last month when Yumna and I went to Labrador to cover the Innu inquiry hearings in Shehajit. And I was really impressed by Heidi's knowledge and how much she cares about the community she's reporting on. And that's exactly the kind of journalists who we want to be working with. And so I'm really excited to be working with her. And hopefully very soon I'll be able to announce another name or two of freelance journalists who have experience covering Labrador, who I'm hoping to work with. I've already started to work with, but I won't say anything until we have a first story to publish. And I'm reading another question from David Brake, which is, am I right in thinking you need enough money from us for 2 full-time on your own so you can qualify for government funding? That is a good question. My personal goal is to have enough sustainable funding. That means not these one-off grants that last for short periods of time, but funding from our readership and from our supporters to have 2 full-time journalists, because before I get into whether that qualifies us for government funding piece, it's just practically so much more feasible to have 2 full-time editors, not just reporters, but have 2 full-time editors with editing experience, so that, once in a while we can have a little bit of a break, have a few days off, or take a few weeks off in the summer and not have to be tuned into our email and publishing stories and stuff every day. So yeah, my goal, and I think the board's goal as well, is to get us to the point where we can have 2 full-time journalists, which wouldn't really change anything in terms of we would still take freelance work, but it would be twice the capacity, twice the worker capacity to do the work that we do now. As far as qualifying for government funding, there are a few different funding initiatives and programs that exist, and one of them, I believe, requires 2 full-time employees, and another, I'm pretty sure, requires 2 full-time equivalent employees, which means if you had 1 full-time and 2 half-time employees, then that would count as 2. So I'm not, I don't know, I don't recall the distinction between which ones those are, or sorry, what the requirements are or the criteria, but just because we don't have 2 full-time editors doesn't mean that we can't qualify for some of that government funding right now. Margaret, you're asking if we have a specific fundraiser happening right now, and the answer is yes. For the last several years, every December we run an end of the year fundraising campaign, and that is usually, I think, probably always has been the biggest fundraising campaign of the year. Basically, last December we got a whole bunch of new support, which was phenomenal, and that is what allowed us to produce. It's a big part of the reason why we were able to produce a lot more content this year, and in my opinion, some pretty hard hitting stories because we had those additional resources. So now our goal for this December. We were really optimistic because we took a different approach last December and set the bar a little bit lower than we wanted to because we didn't want to be disappointed. We wanted to reach our goal, and we ended up reaching it like very early on in our fundraiser. So we exceeded our fundraising goal of last year. This year, this December, which our fundraiser started the first week of December and it goes till December 31st. And we're trying to bring on 100 new supporters. So when people sign up to become a monthly supporter, you can donate as little as $5 a month or as much as you want. And we don't expect everybody to be able to afford to donate. But if $5 a month is within your means, I would argue that there are fewer causes more worth our our attention and our donations right now, because the state of affairs politically in Newfoundland and Labrador and in Canada right now is deteriorating, and we are losing journalists and newsrooms. And I really fear I'm seeing already some of the impacts of that. And we're not new. We've been around as a nonprofit media outlet for 10 years, doing this on a shoestring budget, doing stories that people care about, covering issues that don't get covered as much by other media, and we want to continue to do that. And my goal and my dream, and I think that of many others too, is to see the Independent become the news media outlet in the province. But realistically, that will only happen if enough people recognize the value of the work that we do and make the decision to support it. And so, thankfully, we've had some people who have been donating for between 5 and 10 years every month now. And I really, at some point, I'm going to find a way to thank them in person, hopefully hold an event or virtual event or in-person event and thank them in person. Because when you donate to help build a media outlet, you don't always see the results right away. We went from publishing a story a week to sometimes publishing 3, 4, 5 stories a week. Sometimes we don't publish a story for a while, and you might wonder where we are, and then we'll drop an investigative story that will, kind of put an issue on people's radar and prompt politicians to start looking at things differently, or start thinking about issues in a way that perhaps they weren't before. And I'd love to at some point in the next hour that we have, talk about some of the stories that I've seen make a difference. But I'm going to try to keep up with some of the comments here now. I just want to say I sometimes ramble, talk a lot, and I'm notorious for that. And so this is kind of like the time is flying by, but I'm also realizing that I need to stop and have a sip of water here, but also try to keep up with the comments. I'm reading a comment here from Michelle Gushu. Hi, Michelle. The TD Ready Commitment Fund is open, and I think with a good grant writing individual, you can be successful under the community commitment area. I will. I'll look into that. I think you mean. I think TD stands for TD Bank or Toronto Dominion Bank. I'm not familiar with that grant, but we'll definitely look into it. Yeah, thanks for the comment, Margaret. We have been working hard over time, and this year in particular, it's been a very busy year. I'm just going to take a breath here for a moment. I don't think there are any other questions yet. Yeah, thanks, Michelle. Send me the link. I appreciate that. And if anybody watching has, I should just say this in general. Okay, so for one, I'll just reiterate, especially for those who've just recently joined us. We are currently in the midst of our year-end fundraising campaign, and we are trying to find 100 new people in the province or from outside the province, but most of our support comes from within the province because we're a provincial publication. 100 new supporters to sign up to donate monthly to support the work that we do, because we have a lot of stories that we unfortunately can't pursue due to a lack of resources. Even though we do get a lot of work done that we're proud of, there are way more stories that we can't do, that we have in our minds, ideas of things that we'd like to pursue when the resources permit. Out of a province of more than 500,000 people, I keep thinking to myself, if we had $1 per resident of the province, we could be doing so much more groundbreaking journalism, probably have a pretty significant impact in terms of informing the public, influencing political outcomes, because we just don't hold politicians and decision makers and other powerful people to account the way that we should. And I think that we can see, the difference that having an independent journalist in St. John's on the Hill can make. I think back to March, I believe it was, when I went for the opening of the House of Assembly and for the spring session. I went to cover the House that week and got to meet some of the. It had been a while since I had been there, so I got to meet some of the reporters in the press gallery, the Newfoundland Labrador Press Gallery here, and it's a wonderful group of journalists, a lot of young journalists. And the issue that was really on my mind was the housing. I want to say housing crisis, but don't want people to think that there's a shortage of housing when there's not. There are a lot of empty homes, and there are a lot of homes that are owned by wealthy people who own a lot of houses and rent them out on Airbnb or jack up the rent and take them off the long-term market. So we do have a housing crisis, but the nature of it isn't necessarily what's the full story of it, I don't think, has been told by the media here. And also homelessness. So the fact that so many people are living on couches, they're couch surfing, living with friends or family, or in tents or outdoors, living rough in the streets. I wanted to prioritize that when the House of Assembly opened in the spring. So I went, and there was a newly minted housing minister, Fred Hutton, former journalist, one of many journalists who have left journalism to I don't know, cross the floor, so to speak, into politics. And it was Fred Hutton's first day as sitting MHA and housing minister after he won the by-election in Bell Island. And he came out, and I asked him straight up a very simple, straightforward question. Some of you watching might remember this, but to me it was a fundamental question that somebody in charge of housing and homelessness would have to give an affirmative answer to, and that is, do you believe housing is a human right? We believe that many other things constitute human rights, but for some reason in this province, our province hasn't declared it, even though the federal government has legislated housing as a human right, even though for more than half a century the United Nations has recognized housing as a human right. Yet we live in a province where so many people are living paycheck to paycheck, and a lot of us are on the cusp of losing our homes and becoming homeless. And yet, we don't have a government that has come out and publicly said housing is a human right, and here's what we're going to do. Working in terms of a policy and legislative framework that revolves around or is based on the assumption that housing is a human right. So when I asked Fred Hutton that, he was very uncomfortable and gave me a kind of a non-answer, said, oh, we're reviewing the Federal Housing Advocates report and we're not going to make a decision on that right now. Well, you can't be the minister of a department like housing if you don't believe that housing is a human right. Just like you shouldn't be the minister responsible for Indigenous affairs if you don't believe that Indigenous people have Indigenous rights. Just like you can't be the minister of justice if you don't believe in the rule of law. And so, I'm using this as an example of, it was a matter of one day of an independent journalist going to the House of Assembly, asking tough questions and pressing a minister, and that changed the conversation in the province around housing and homelessness. It made headlines in other news media outlets, and then other reporters from other media outlets, once that had been kind of that egg had been cracked and that question had been asked, we're also starting to talk about and ask questions about housing as a human right. And so I'm using this example to show how much of a difference one independent journalist who is not beholden or limited or constrained by any sort of narrow parameters of acceptable discussion and dialogue, who can go into a legislature, ask the premier or ministers questions, and it doesn't take much. This isn't about me. It's about press freedom, and it's about independence in journalism, having the ability to do that. And so our impact isn't only on publishing stories that other media don't or won't, but when we have the resources to be in spaces where other journalists are, to hold power to account, then we can start asking difficult questions, challenging, important questions, and hopefully that leads to, hopefully that influences the coverage, media coverage of important issues in our province. So I'm going to leave that at that for right now and just catch up on a few questions here. Layla just reminded me that we are going to do the winner. We are going to do a draw. For those of you who don't know, we recently ran a separate crowdfunding campaign, kind of a little bit before the current one, because Layla Baudouin wants to make a documentary that is based on and will take further an investigation that she and her Seasplainer co-author Jen Thornhill Verma did last month, or it was October now, actually, I believe, about the rates of fishing fatalities in Newfoundland and Labrador. The two of them found, basically through doing data journalism, doing a bunch of digging and speaking with people, we were able to report that despite all of the safety advancements in commercial fishing, like having personal locator beacons, some fish harvesters and enterprise owners doing certain kinds of training, having life vests and stuff, we've learned that the rates of deaths in commercial fishing in our province has not gone down. And so, as we know, over the past year, there have been several deaths in the fishing industry. And when that happens, families are devastated, communities are devastated, And these are things that we don't really ever get over because fishing is so deeply embedded in our, deeply rooted in our identity, and is still a big part of our communal identities as communities. I live in a fishing community, and I know firsthand, even though I'm not a fisher, I know firsthand how much fishing means to our community and how much respect the fish harvesters in our communities get, and they deserve it because they risk their lives when they go out and boat. And unfortunately, fewer fishers, the safety advancements that we've had in recent years have not led to fewer fish harvesters dying while just simply doing their jobs. So we, after publishing that story, Layla decided she wanted to do a documentary, and she's already been gathering footage. She just needs the resources to do it, and it's not something that the independent, not we don't have deep pockets, and we weren't just able to say, okay, here's what you need to go and do this. So we decided that we'd do a separate crowdfunder to help bring this documentary to fruition. Layla is also from a fishing community, Port Saunders, and on the Northern Peninsula, and it's an issue that's been close to her for many years. So we ran that campaign, and as part of it, as a bonus, we said that anybody who donates $50 or more to the crowdfunding campaign will be entered into a draw to win an original oil painting from Jen Thornhill Verma, who is Layla's co-author for Seasplainer. And Jen, if you didn't know, is like an award-winning, national award-winning journalist. Currently has a fellowship with the Pulitzer Center, and has been traveling around the world covering the oceans and climate change. And we're so lucky to have her. She's also a Newfoundlander from Bay of Islands, and is presently living in Ottawa. She's also an accomplished painter and has exhibited her work, had shows, does amazing paintings. And so she has a painting that she donated to the cause for us to raffle off, to give away to one lucky person who was generous enough to donate to help make the documentary happen. And so I am going to see if I can bring Layla in now to do the draw. If anybody has advice on how to do this, let me know. Layla, I think you told me earlier there was a way to do it. So just bear with me for a second. I'm going to try to bring Layla in so we can do the draw and announce the name of the winner of Jen's painting. If I can't figure out how to bring her in here, we may have to. Layla may have to do it and then give us the name. Oh, I also see Sue Calendire. I haven't seen you in a long, or I haven't talked to you in a long time, Sue. It's great to hear from you. I'll get to you. I'll get to your question in just a few moments. For those just tuning in, I'm just taking a moment to try to bring Layla into the feed here. So that she can do a draw for Jen Thornhill Verma's original oil painting, which I forget the name of it, but it is it's a painting that was inspired by, in real life, or a photo from Port aux Basques right before the hurricane hit a couple of years ago. Okay. I think I'm on to something here, Layla. Once your friends are watching, tap add next to the person you'd like to add to your live video. Send invite. Layla, I have not figured it out. So if you are able to request to come in and I can approve it, to do that, because I think you said that that was an option. Um, okay, I'll answer another question in the meantime while I'm waiting to see if Layla can figure it out. If we can't, that's all right. We will figure out a way to do the draw and announce the winner. I know that before we started, Layla had all of the names of people who donated to her to the crowdfunding campaign written down on a piece of paper and put into a red Christmas bag with a reindeer on it, and was going to do it the old-fashioned way, draw a name from the bag. I'm going to go back to Sue Kellen Dyer. Your question, Sue, you said, would you consider joining me as a guest on my X space on the importance of independent media and to plug your fundraiser? Absolutely, yeah. Definitely. Just message me and let me know when you'd like to do that, and I'd love to, and I appreciate the opportunity to spread the word about the fundraiser. Margaret Cranford said, I think in this was in response to I was talking about our coverage of housing and homelessness, lack of capacity of staffing to support mental health and addictions. Absolutely. This is one of the sort of saddest or most unjust parts of homelessness, which is that, people might remember last year in November, I went and spent a few nights at the Tent City for Change encampment in St. John's outside of Colonial Building. I set up my tent and camped there and got to know people who were staying there or who were coming and going, who were staying in other shelters and coming and going from the encampment to get food. And you know what? Beyond getting food, to get camaraderie and just to be around people who weren't judging them, because everywhere they go in the streets, often in shelters, they feel like they're being judged. And so a big part of the reason why so many people were coming and going from Tent City for Change was because of the community that was built there. So I spent a few nights there, and I did meet several people who are living with very serious mental health conditions or illness and aren't getting the support that they need. And I think that it is that issue of mental health or mental unwellness is a huge factor in why a lot of people end up homeless, whether it is addiction or something else, undiagnosed mental illnesses. There are a lot of reasons why people experience homelessness, but I think mental health is a very big reason. And then the folks who I've met at Tent City for Change, in the shelters, and in the course of my work covering other stories, including in Labrador, who are living in shelters or are homeless, who are living with addiction. I don't think I've met a single person in the province living with addiction who has not experienced some form of significant trauma in their lives. Some of them as adults or young adults, a lot of them as children. And so, this is how a lot of intergenerational trauma, a lot of cases of intergenerational trauma exist, how they perpetuate themselves. A lot of young people, children, have traumatic experiences and end up at some point in their lives, often as young people, young adults, with addiction. And that leads to other things. It leads to overdose, it leads to suicide, it leads to homelessness. And we don't have a good social safety net because of the prevalence of it, the amount of homelessness right now. I know our government has taken some big steps lately, the new mental health facility, but it's really only the tip of the iceberg, having a new facility in St. John's. And a new one in Goose Bay, I would add. I don't know a whole lot about that one, and I actually haven't been in the one in St. John's yet, so I look forward to seeing that someday. But I think it's safe to say that for those of us who aren't in a cozy little bubble, in a well-to-do neighborhood in the province, I think most of us see it firsthand or experience it with loved ones or friends that there is a mental health crisis, there is an addiction crisis, and a homelessness crisis in our province, and they are all interrelated in various ways. Yeah, and Margaret also says an accountability of people in positions to make needed changes. I think that goes back to the point I raised earlier about how having one journalist on the hill who doesn't have to, and I'm not dissing other journalists in the province who work in daily news. When you work in daily news, you go, you get your story quickly, you get back to your bureau or work from an office somewhere, get the story done quickly in time for the 5 o'clock or the 6 o'clock news. It's not an optimal kind of working environment to be able to do deep dives and also to be able to risk your relationship with politicians. I, for one, am not a well-liked journalist. I don't have any politicians who ring me up and say, I got a story for you as long as I can give it to you anonymously. We don't do power politics. We don't break stories every second day about what one anonymous politician says about their party or another anonymous politician. We don't do that. We're not going to be compromised by power. And we are willing to risk burning the bridges, and I think I have already. There are certain departments who will not respond to my requests for information or for comment, including the Department of Finance. Trying to think who else. Sometimes the Premier's office. There was a time where they would respond to all of my requests, and now, even though I don't make that many requests to politicians or to the departments in the province, some of them just don't get back to me. But that's okay, because the real stories are not on Confederation Hill. The most important stories in our province are coming from communities, coming from the people in our communities, and coming from those who don't have the same platform to put out press releases or go in front of the news cameras at the drop of a hat or at the snap of a finger every day. So we get stories from the people, and when we need to hold power to account, we bring that information and those stories to the people, to decision makers in our province. Yeah, Michelle Gushu says, unfortunately, most still are not getting the support they need. The systems are beyond broken. So that's Michelle talking about homelessness. Michelle has done a lot of work, advocacy work with people experiencing homelessness, and so she's one of the people who knows best firsthand how severe it is. Craig Lewis says we need an independent nation for NL. Research Qatar and see what they do for 300,000 citizens to what NL can be doing. We have far more natural resources. Qatar. I'm actually not 100% sure what the proper way of pronouncing it is. They give free education, healthcare, housing, no sales tax, no income tax, monthly income. Yeah, we sure do have a lot of natural resources. And actually, the most recent column, Energy Futures column from Angela Antle, asks I think something along the lines of what Craig is saying, which is that if we are going to be going ahead with this new Churchill Falls deal with Quebec, there's a lot, by the way, that has not been addressed about that in the early coverage this week of that, which the Independent, we haven't reported anything aside from Angela Antle's column yet, but we will be doing a lot more coverage of Churchill Falls, I promise. But anyways, Angela's piece asks a very basic question. If we are going to be, producing all of this renewable energy through increased large-scale hydro, having huge, wind farms, wind to hydrogen projects on the island, and all of this, in addition to offshore oil and the mines, why would we still be paying so much for our energy bills when, as I said earlier, so many of us are living paycheck to paycheck and on the brink of bankruptcy or of losing our homes? I'm saying we because there's not everybody probably knows somebody in this situation. The statistics have been published this year. I don't have them in front of me, but the number of people living to paycheck and in debt in this province is wild, and people having to sacrifice quality food to be able to survive, to pay heating bills and stuff. I think Angela and Craig are raising a really good point, which is that if so much wealth is leaving our province in terms of profits, why can't we at least give residents of the province a break when it comes to energy? And Craig is going further, saying we should also have free education, free healthcare, and post-secondary education. That was the vision in the beginning, to have free post-secondary. But we see that over the last number of years, the Fury government has continued to cut funding to Memorial University to the point where the university is falling apart, literally and figuratively. Healthcare, it's great that we have the healthcare in our country, the free healthcare in our country, the way that some other countries don't, like the United States. But at the same time, when the healthcare system is also in shambles, and you can't get an appointment, you can't get a family doctor, you can't get, you have to wait a year for an MRI, these kinds of things. I mean, we hear stories all the time about people not being diagnosed soon enough and dying early in this province because of the state of our healthcare system. So I think that the points that are being made here, I think the general idea that Craig is making and others that I've heard many people make this, which is if we're so rich in resources, why is there still so much inequality and poverty in our province? And why can't we have the basics that we need to live good lives and simply to give our families and future generations a good life? It's an easy question to ask. The solutions we may not all agree on the solutions, but I'm less concerned about whether or not we can agree to find the solutions than I am about our ability to connect and to have healthy discussions about potential solutions. And so as we cover these stories, one thing that we do at The Independent is we try to not only report how shitty something might be, how bad a situation might be, whether it's healthcare or housing, but we also incorporate into our coverage and into our stories solutions. It's called solutions-oriented journalism. It's a concept that a lot of us journalists in the profession talk about. It's being more and more it's being embraced by journalists, but again, it's not something that necessarily always fits into the daily news cycle. So but you know, if you're familiar with our work, which I think a lot of you watching are, you'll know that when we report on problems that people are facing, we also go to those and try to give those a voice and a platform who are proposing solutions or who have evidence of solutions working elsewhere. And we'll continue to do that, and we'll do it more the more support we have. Okay. So I'm just going to go back to Layla for a moment. She says, "Hi everyone, we just did the draw on the video and sent to Justin." Okay, so there is a video presumably in my inbox somewhere, but Layla has shared that where did my chat thing go? Sorry guys. Okay, Layla has shared that the winner of the draw for the original oil painting from Jen Thornhill Verma is Bradley Russell. Bradley Russell. I know Bradley I haven't talked to Bradley in years ago, but we both went to Memorial University around the same time. Brad, if you're there watching, I'm not sure if you are, but if you're there, congratulations. It is a beautiful painting, and we'll do our best to get it to you as quickly as possible. We'll connect with you and find out how we can get that to you. Thanks for supporting the documentary that Layla will be taking the lead on making, and yeah, we'll talk to you about that and get that to you as soon as we can. Thanks, Layla, for doing that, and sorry I couldn't bring you onto the live stream. Margaret says we have a huge aged population in Newfoundland and Labrador. I'll be the first to admit that we haven't done enough coverage of seniors and issues facing seniors and the challenges that they face. To me, it's one of the most important issues because when we talk about a good life for us all in Newfoundland and Labrador, like I said earlier, we want to give our children a good life. We want to set the stage for future generations in Newfoundland and Labrador to not have to deal with the same struggles that we have and that generations before us have. But we often forget about seniors. And actually, covering issues that seniors are facing is one of my top priorities for 2025. Again, if we can see if we get more support to build our capacity, there will be more coverage of seniors. But even if we don't, I'll make sure that we do more than we did this year, which was very little, because people work hard their entire lives. They live through a lot, and it shouldn't be the case that in the final years of your life, whether or not you have a quality life depends on how much money you have or your family might have. All seniors in our province deserve to live out the remaining years of their life with dignity and happy and together with their loved ones, with their families, and not shipped out of their communities and put in homes where they can't see anybody. And there are a lot of other issues, and I take that comment to heart, and I take it seriously, and I'm making a commitment now that the Independent will do more coverage of seniors in 2025. Yeah, I am seeing a long comment from Clayton Tapp. Clayton, yeah, so you're going into very specific details about a story that I believe you did email me not long ago. Um, I will look into it. I can't promise that I'll devote a huge amount. That I have the resources to devote to doing a big investigation, but I will talk to you personally or privately. I mean, about it soon, because I understand you're in Corner Brook too, so it shouldn't be hard for us to get together. It's just been really difficult to do that recently. Been kind of overworked and overwhelmed lately. Seeing if I missed any comments there. Should have a live Zoom meeting, Craig says. Do you mean like to talk about the Independence coverage instead of on Facebook, Craig, or do you mean a Zoom meeting about a particular issue or something? Sue Kellen Dyer says, we lost the fish stocks and lost 200,000 people. The young families left, and with that, many seniors who would have been cared for by their children now are in personal care homes. Yeah, there's no doubt that the departure of a lot of young people and young families has resulted in that, and that's a big factor in why many seniors are alone, and it breaks my heart to think about it. I know people. Actually, years ago, about 15 years ago, I used to go and visit my pop, who was in a long-term care facility in Gander in the final years of his life. He lived with dementia, and it was very hard to go and visit him, not knowing if he was going to know who I was or not. So it was quite emotionally draining preparing for those visits, but they were very rewarding when they were good, and they were rewarding even when they weren't good, because part of caring for our loved ones is being there in their worst times and worst moments too, and making sure that they're receiving the care that they need and deserve from professionals. But when I would go into this home, I would often pass seniors in the hallways in their wheelchair or with a walker, or sitting down in a common area, or just talking to themselves in their rooms. And I learned from others in the home that many of them just had nobody. They had nobody visiting them. And my heart also goes out to the people, the children of those people, and the grandchildren, the families who had no choice but to leave the province to find good work, and have to live with that, that guilt and maybe even shame of not being able to be close to your loved ones when they're in long term care, and would really benefit from regular contact and visits by loved ones. Another reason why we need to be not just doing stories on all of these issues as if they're isolated, but like who just said in one of our recent fundraising emails that went out on the Indy email newsletter list, we're connecting a lot of the dots. Neria said that in a recent email that went out to our supporters during our fundraising campaign. That's something that we try to do, is make sure that issues aren't only reported and understood in isolation, because what happens to one person or one issue that impacts one family or community always reverberates throughout families, throughout communities, and has other impacts and is impacted by other issues. Healthcare, education, workers' rights, labor, and employment. All of these things are deeply interconnected. And so we have to see them for we have to see the bigger picture. And it's not that any one of us has that big picture and knows everything. We have to really be humble in this work that we do as journalists, as independent journalists, but also as people who support independent journalism. We are not going to find all of the solutions, but we're also never going to have solutions come from the top down when there's not sort of communal engagement, when there's not an environment where we can speak with one another without hostility. It's becoming harder and harder with this growing polarization. And there are a lot of things that I think we as journalists can do to help sort of try to bridge those growing divides, but also to do reporting in a way that is not misleading people to think that there are single issues with single solutions, and that everything kind of is connected, and that there may be ways to look at solving various issues through various means at once. Thanks, Jen. I'm really proud of the work that we've done too, and really grateful that you've been a big part of it. Jen Thornhill Verma, whose painting we just one of her original oil paintings we just raffled off. Brad Russell won it, and Jen and Layla, if you haven't read their most recent Seasplainer, if you haven't read any of the Seasplainers, go back and look at the archive on our website, theindependent.ca. But if you haven't read their most recent one, I think it's perhaps the best one they've done to date, and that says a lot considering that's saying a lot considering they've won awards for other installments of their Fisheries and Oceans Explainer series. But the most recent one that digs into data and shows that there hasn't been a decrease in fishing fatality rates in our province in recent years, despite all kinds of new safety measures being brought in, that's a must read, and it's something that we are going to be following up on, because I watch fishing boats go out in and out of the harbor every day from my living room, and there's not a day that goes by that I'm thinking somewhere at the front or in the back of my mind that I hope that they come back safe. And I haven't even lost anybody close to me, but if you read Jen and Layla's most recent Seasplainer, which is called "The Fatal Truth About Fishing Fatalities in Commercial Fishing in Newfoundland and Labrador," it's very easy to feel the pain or see the pain that other families who've lost loved ones are feeling in the fisheries. Craig Lewis is suggesting that the Independent could potentially have a physical paper again. We need to have papers in the hands of readers. Maybe have a survey for many seniors are not online. Um, yeah, it's something we've thought about, Craig. And I've looked to other parts of the country where some small independent media outlets have managed to print newspapers still. It's very risky because it costs money, and I don't think that there's. I met the publishers of a newspaper recently from publishers of a newspaper in northern BC, and they were a weekly paper, I believe, or bi-weekly, and they were still profitable. But it's very hard. It's very time consuming, labor intensive, and costs a lot of money to print anything these days. The best we could hope for, I think, would be to have some kind of a network of people around the province, since we're so spread out, who could, if we were able to produce a very small kind of like newspaper or newsletter or something on some basis, some frequency, I'm not sure what it would be, to print them off and deliver them to places like seniors residences, long-term care homes, places like that, put them in cafes. It's an idea that's kind of come to mind many times over the years, but there just has never been an apparent feasible way to do it. But I love the idea. I think you're right. I mean, I think if we had something that people could hold in their hands, that we would probably reach other demographics and reach a lot of people who just aren't online, aren't getting their news on social media, and aren't signed up for our newsletter list. With that said, for those who are watching right now and those who might be watching later, we do have, as you know, the meta ban has been in effect for over a year, so the Independent cannot share its stories on Facebook or on Instagram, and that was delivered a serious blow to us and to lots of media across the country. We will be able to continue sharing on Google because Google has struck a deal with the federal government where a whole bunch of money is going to be distributed among newsrooms, money from Google as a mandatory payment for the advertising that Google basically took away from newspapers by sharing news content online for free and then doing their own advertising. Anyways, long story short, it looks like the news ban in Canada right now is remaining limited to Meta, to Facebook and Instagram, but it has delivered a serious blow because we used to share a lot of our work that way. Now we are relying on our newsletter as our primary means of getting our stories out. So every weekend, I or one of my colleagues send a personalized kind of email out, a newsletter to our roughly 5,000 newsletter subscribers. And I know that they get shared, get forwarded on to other people. But if you want to follow what we're doing and you don't tend to, log into all of your favorite news sites every day, and you want to keep up to date with what we're working on and not miss anything, just go to theindependent.ca and sign up for our newsletter. It's free. We often share stories there first before we publish on our website, so you sometimes get first look at some of our stories. We often share things from some things from other media that are on our radar, and we offer other things in our newsletter that you just won't be able to get on our social media channels or on our website. So take a minute and go to our website and sign up for the email newsletter if you haven't already. And and we're on Blue Sky. Angela just pointed out. Yeah, we recently started a Blue Sky account. So right now we're on YouTube. We don't post there a whole lot, but I hope we will in the future as we do more video content. YouTube, Facebook, and Instagram. I think you can still follow us, but we're not even able to access our own accounts there and post anything, so they're kind of useless right now. But we're still on Twitter and we're on Blue Sky as well. And on Facebook and Instagram, you can follow me. And I've been posting a lot of our stories, sharing a lot of our stories from my personal account. Doesn't have the same reach as from the Indy account, but you can follow me and I share all of our stories as well. And I'm also on, what's it called? LinkedIn. Follow me on LinkedIn too. I share stuff there. If there are no more questions, I'm going to probably end in a few moments. I just want to say a few more words. Just a big thanks to everybody who has been reading The Independent, who has been sharing our work with others, and a huge, huge thanks to I don't know the number. It's somewhere in the 300 and something range, I think, people who support us financially every month, in addition to all the people who have made one-time donations over the past year. We appreciate it all. Every little bit helps. Every dollar helps us put out another story that we hope will have an impact, a positive impact on our province. We don't waste our time doing stories that we don't think are important or don't have the potential to inspire others to fight for the positive change that we need in so many areas of our life, our collective life, and of our lives in Newfoundland and Labrador. And we're hoping to bring on 100 new monthly donors by the end of December. So far, 20 new supporters have signed up. So we're looking for 80 more in the next 12 days. And it's a lot, but I'm hopeful that if you who watching and who already support us can do, help us out a little bit and help spread the word, invite others to support us, share our crowdfunding campaign, get other people to sign up for our newsletter, just help draw attention to the work we do. This is not for anybody in particular. The Independent, the work we do is really a labor of love, and it's because we still believe in the power of journalism to be a powerful force of change in society. And we take our work very seriously, and we've worked hard, really hard over the past year to break a whole bunch of hard-hitting stories and investigations, and continue to offer what we became known for over the past decade, which is some of the best commentary and analysis in the province from a diversity of voices and perspectives, and that's not something that you get anywhere else. So keep on keeping on, I guess, and don't hesitate to reach out. Send me questions anytime. If people have watched this live or will see it online after, and you think it's a great idea, you learned something, or you have more questions and you want to do it again, if there's a demand for it, if there's a desire for it, I'm happy to do it again. Not over the holidays or not before Christmas, but definitely happy to make this an occasional thing so that I can connect, and perhaps others from the Indy team too can connect with our readers and viewers and supporters. I'll leave it at that for now. Once again, go to theindependent.ca, sign up for our free newsletter, and if you can, sign up to help us reach our end of the year fundraising goal. Even if it's a few bucks a month, every little bit helps, and we just want to have more and more of you standing beside us as we continue to do our important work. Thanks everyone for tuning in. We really appreciate your readership, your support, and your engagement. Drop me a line anytime, and it's great to hear from you. And it was wonderful to speak with all those of you who asked questions tonight. And we'll be talking to you again sometime in the new year. Okay, enjoy the holidays, and we'll talk again soon. Bye-bye.